What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with some more PGA DFS picks and lineup advice for DraftKings and FanDuel, this time for the Arnold Palmer Invitational down at Bay Hill. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. I'm joined by our PGA DFS analyst, Niromada. Niro, what's up, man? How's it going?
I'm good. Excited for this week. We get all the big boys back, showing up, ready to play Arnie's event. It's going to be a tough course. It's going to be a tough, grindy thing with all the best players in the world, or most all the best players in the world, except for the guys who are on live. So yeah, should be a good week. I'm excited.
Absolutely. And we're here to break it all down for you. What we'll do, we'll review last week just briefly to see what we learned and where our hits and misses were. Then we will transition and talk about the top data driven plays in our Occupy model for this week's event, the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Then we will look at which players we expect to be more highly owned than anticipated in high dollar GPPs and any smaller contests where pros are allowed to play. And then we'll close it out with our early market movers as we're recording this Tuesday afternoon. And then close it out with some showdown and weather related notes. We'll see if we can go back to back with that one. As you see on screen here, just briefly, this is from last week, a nice spike week for me. Won a world championship ticket with that same lineup, finished second in the 250 for 10K. And then, not to be outdone, won a $4,000 ticket with our showdown model in round four. And Nero, you talked about it, and our conversation led me to this. We talked about it in this very video last week, was the potential wave advantage. Did it play out exactly as we anticipated? Not really, but the wave advantage materialized nonetheless, and this lineup that I used had 6 players from that early morning wave on Thursday.
Yeah. First of all, congratulations. Well deserved spike week for you. Maybe too long time coming, but that's part of why it was so well deserved. And like you told me once, if you keep putting sharp plays together and sharp lineup construction together, like eventually it comes your way. So congrats on that. Yeah, the lineup, the wave advantage, like it was there. It was huge. Just to be clear, but it wasn't because like the wind picked up or something. I think it was just the scoring conditions were so easy on Thursday morning relative to everything else. That I mean, it was like literally a dome, no wind whatsoever, and very, very soft, like the softest course conditions of the week. The course gradually got drier as the week went along. Winds picked up a little bit, but we thought it was going to be, oh, the winds are going to be up in these other waves. That's actually not what happened. But it was so pristine and so good on Thursday morning that the rest of the other half of the field just could not make up that stagger. Like it was just, I remember looking Friday morning, you and I were messaging, and there was only one person that was in the top 22 or something like that from the other wave, and it was crazy.
Yeah, and the biggest thing was, if you look at this lineup, only one of the 6 golfers were in the top 5, which is pretty crazy to win a GPP of this size to have that happen. But the scoring, the fantasy scoring, was so high in that early Thursday morning that you had such a huge buffer, Nero, with those guys that they scored 20, 30 more points than the guys on Thursday afternoon. And even if the other guys outplayed them the next 3 days, they didn't make up that initial scoring. And as evidenced by the cut numbers, 42 of the early Thursday golfers made the cut. Just 26 who teed off Thursday afternoon made the cut. So not only did you have this distinct 6 out of 6 advantage, you also had this early morning cushion in terms of fantasy points that allowed you to stay at the top of the leaderboards above some of these other lineups.
Yeah, first of all, the 42-26 is not normal. So when you see numbers like that, there was a wave advantage. Usually it's because of this like distinct wind thing that's happening. It wasn't the case here. I think the poster boy for that actually was Jake Knapp. Shoots 59.
Yeah.
And then like what do you do the rest if he would have played those other 3 days, if he would have played like that first of all, he never would have made the cut. And second of all, he didn't really, he didn't do anything, but he still finished as one of the top fantasy scorers because he shot so low on Thursday morning that it just gave him a buffer and he just was in neutral the whole rest of the tournament. But it didn't matter because Thursday morning was just happened to be such an easier set of scoring conditions than the rest of the event.
Yeah, he legit scored like 75 DraftKings points in classic contests in round one. Couple quick notes just about this lineup, Nero, for people who are can use this moving forward. One is if you look at the players in this lineup, Russell Henley, top of the model for us last week. Michael Kim, number 6 in the model. Luke Clanton, Joe Highsmith, top 20 plays in the model. Denny MacArthur was a trifecta play. Andrew Putnam, in addition to Highsmith and Clanton, saw some line moves that you pointed out in the daily plug as well. Clanton was also a write up in the daily plug. So nice combination of the ingredients for our soup in this lineup. And Nero, the thing I am most proud about is how pristine the lineup construction is in terms of the ownership buckets that you write up in the daily plug every single week.
Yeah, for people who don't know, Brian and I are very much lineup construction nerds, and this thing is like a painting that should be hung up somewhere in like the PGA Hall of Fame because it fits perfectly. We talk about all the time. You want two players at 5% ownership or lower, two players in between 5 and 15%, and then two players above 15%. Like you look for patterns, the things that repeat. That pattern repeats itself at the top of GPPs on DraftKings over and over and over again for years and years and years. And this lineup was perfect. Now, again, it's not sounds easy to do. It's not always that easy because projected ownership is always a guess, and you never really know, is a guy going to be 5 or is he going to be 8 or is he going to be 2 or maybe. But this was a beauty. So congrats, you followed it perfectly, and this is what happens when you combine sharp thoughts, get your soup ingredients just right, and get your lineup construction straight. This is the kind of stuff that can happen.
Exactly. So let's talk about those soup ingredients for this week at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. And again, that is a cornerstone for how you can build lineups for PGA DFS in the future. But I know 99% of you out there say, yeah, but I need the picks for this week. So let's talk about that. Nero, let's talk about our Occupy model for the Arnold Palmer this week. Two facts really quickly that I was just thinking about before we dive into the model. I was shocked to rediscover, and like I remember this, but I just had forgotten about it over the past couple of years, that how predictive Bay Hill is in terms of course history. The second most predictive course on tour in terms of how well you've played and how long you've played at this course for future performance, second only to Augusta National.
Yeah, I play course history very heavily this week. It's a big factor into, again, we've got the model doing its thing. I do a little bit more subjective thing, and it's a huge factor in there for me. I think there's obviously course dynamics at the Masters that lead to that kind of overfitting of course history data, and I think you've got the same thing at Bay Hill. Two very different golf courses, by the way. In some ways maybe couldn't be more different, but very distinct. And because they're distinct, it requires a very narrow set of skills to conquer it, and you see that played out over and over, and that's why it's the type of course that really over indexes on the course history piece.
And if that's not enough, the wind is going to play more than likely a major factor this week. We'll save that for the end of the show when we talk about the showdown and weather notes. But Nero, that's going to impact some data driven decisions as well.
Absolutely. Wind is usually a factor here. Again, any of the events on the Florida swing, which is we're in the middle of, right? And we've got the players next week. Wind is usually a factor. And when you already have a very hard golf course, they try to make it very dry. I don't know if they're going to be able to totally do that this week because of the rain they've had in the Orlando area and the lead up to this. But when you add the wind in, and the guys are already having trouble controlling the ball, and then they really can't control it out of the rough, and then the wind just adds that extra variable. Like it's going to be a factor this week for sure.
I saw a clip right before we went live of Harris English in a practice round hitting it out of the rough directly into the water. So if that's a sign of things to come, these guys will certainly be in trouble. And I know you're watching now. It's like, guys, where the hell are the picks? Let's talk about it. All right. Top play in our model this week, Nero, Sugar Shane Lowry.
Yeah, well, first of all, we just talked about the wind. Shane is a great wind player, but really like top 10 in ball striking, top 10 in tough scoring conditions, which is what this is going to be, and top 6, I believe, in total driving. And again, like you cannot you cannot be in the rough off the tee on this golf course. If you are, just forget about it. Like you need to consistently be in the fairway, and it's still long, so you need to be long-ish, and in the fairway. And Shane is hitting his irons right now just about better than anybody in the world. So I can easily see why he's at the top of the model.
He's even above Scotty Scheffler, who may surprisingly rank number 2 in our model this week. Nero did a little deep dive into the model behind the scenes. Not number 1 because he is actually just outside the top 20 in long irons in terms of approach proximity, which will be important this week based on how long the course is. And that may be a little surprising, but again, this is a guy that we'd be paying $12,000 for on DraftKings. What are your thoughts?
Well, he's two-time champion here. So like I don't think it's a good week to fade Scotty. His last three finishes here are first, fourth, and first. So
Pretty good.
good luck. Good luck if you really wanna fade that. But you're right. He hasn't quite been his completely dialed in self with his longer irons, but it's a great fit for him. Again, I never know exactly where I'm going to be in my allocations until Wednesday night, but I can't see myself really being under the field on Scotty this week.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where ownership ends up. Again, we're recording this Tuesday afternoon, so we still have another 36 hours for ownership to really materialize and settle in. Next in our model, number 3 is Xander, who was out for a while with that injury. Obviously, he's good everywhere, Nero, but the biggest question that we don't really know the answer to is the rust.
Yeah, the rust is definitely a factor. Again, if this is one of those weeks we over-index on the course history, not great for him. He's 25th, 39th, 24th in his three starts here. Also, I always look for the guys that didn't used to come here until this became a signature event and the money basically forced them to come here. And Xander fits the bill on there. Like he's really only come back, played it once, but he's only come back since it's been a signature event. So could easily see myself being under on Xander. But again, this course, you want the ball striking robot and you want the guys that excel in all those ball striking categories, and that's why Xander is up near the top of the model.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting take on maybe a reason to fade some guys this week on how or what the reasons are for them actually coming to this event and how well because guys are going to come to courses right near where it fits their skill set or fits their eye for whatever reason. But when the money's this good, they're willing to maybe take some risk on that front.
Yeah, exactly. Justin Thomas is another one that comes to mind as someone who normally would skip this event, but he's been playing since it's been a signature event, and it's not a great fit for him. I mean, he's not in the top 10 anywhere, but it's not a great fit for him because he sprays his driver a little bit more than the average person, and that is big trouble around here.
Yeah, because if you miss the fairway here, you're in the thick ass rough, and if you miss even further,
Yes.
you're in the water. So misses of all sizes are penalized here. Maybe unlike some of the recent courses we've been talking about here in our videos.
Yeah, 100%. So then if I look at like the next two guys on the list, Roy McIlroy, Corey Connors, again, there's two of your top like total driving guys on the PGA Tour. Roy's been playing great lately. Connors maybe is the epitome of the ball striking robot type of player. Not, short game, not that great. Doesn't matter as much here because the rough is so thick around the greens. But just straight and long with his stuff, and so it makes sense why he's in up near the top.
Yeah, so Connors rounds out the top 6. Next is a guy who's been at the top of the model or top 10 in the model pretty much all season. What a turnaround it's been for Michael Kim, who we've talked about seemingly every show so far this season. The biggest question now, Nero, is when does fatigue set in? Because this dude's been playing a lot.
He has been playing a lot. So his last 4 weeks: sixth, 13th, 13th, and second.
Yeah, dude.
I don't know if you're going to find much more consistency from from him like that. So, and also someone who hasn't played here recently because he hasn't been good enough to be qualifying for the signature events. So, but he's been hitting the ball really well, and that's what you want coming into this, and that's why he's up near the top of the mile. I'll be curious where his ownership comes in. Um, Someone that you could possibly get over the field with without having to have too much exposure.
Which are the types of plays we always love for our high risk lineups. Finally, closing out the top 10 there, we have two elite guys and a guy that may be the answer to a trivia question that most people won't know the answer to. And who is the number 1 long iron player in the field this week? We have two elite guys and this guy. It's Hideki and Ludwig Oberg, and JJ Spawn.
Yeah, by the way, you stumped me on that one. I would not have guessed Spawn in probably 10, I don't know, 20 guesses. It would have taken me a long time before I would have guessed Spawn as the number 1 long iron player in the field. And maybe that shows I need to spend more time in the data. Hideki and Ludwig, again, more of the ball striking robots, top 10 and ball striking. Both of them also excel in difficult scoring conditions. Like Hideki quite a lot this week. Always like Ludwig, although he just won, so it depends on how you feel on that type of stuff. But yeah, Spawn, look, in these type of events, small field, everything's condensed. We look for reasons to play guys that have lower ownership. There's a great reason to play Spawn. He's the number one long iron player in the field. Is he as good a quality as most of the guys in the field? Of course, he's not. But again, we're looking for reasons to include these lower owned guys in our lineups this week, and that's a good fact for Spawn.
Any credibility to the idea, and I just came up with this, by the way. So he finished T2 last week at the Cognizant, but it wasn't like he was ever in contention, and it wasn't like a very stressful second place finish, unlike some of these other guys that were floating in the top five for most of the tournament. Any belief that that is a better indicator of stress free, can parlay that into success the following week, as opposed to someone who was grinding it out and had the pressure of the top of the leaderboard on them on Sunday, where some of those guys we may look to fade in the following week's
Yeah.
events. Any thought to that?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good thought. You know me well enough, or people who have read the plug long enough know that one of the angles that I do like to play quite a bit is guys who went low on the weekend, or especially the Sunday on the week before, and maybe they didn't have to deal with all the rest of the stuff, all the stress that comes along with like trying to win a tournament or having a realistic shot to win. They backdoored their way into a top 10 or a top 5, in Spawn's case a top 2, because he had, I think, about the third or fourth lowest weekend score at the Cognizant. So I would say that's another positive in his direction, for reasons why we would want to play him this week.
And a little secret, that type of strategy, looking for guys who went low on the weekend, which has proven to be a pretty profitable strategy anyways, it would have gotten you on Jake Knapp this week after his finish in Mexico over the weekend. But you know what else it would have gotten you on? It would have got you on Joe Highsmith.
Correct, 100%. Yeah, it's a good one, and it's one that I've used repeatedly over the years.
All right, next there, let's transition for those out there who are playing high stakes contests or any GPP where a pro can play. And if we look at our expected projected ownership and we compare it for these next group of guys, it's going to be way higher, double, sometimes even triple, because there are a certain set of industry projections that really inflate the ownership of these high ranked golfers in those projections. Nero, who on DraftKings and FanDuel do you expect to open your contest Thursday morning and say, wow, these guys were much higher owned than projected ownership indicated, but we knew that because of these projections?
Yeah, well, we usually have a couple crossovers, and we do this week as well. The first two on both DraftKings and FanDuel will surprise no one. Scotty and Rory. So, again, you just got real high floors. It's going to be difficult scoring this week. Tends to get those real elite players up towards the top. So, I would expect Scotty and Rory to be over owned in high stakes contests, especially in smaller field high stakes contests. Uh, Last week's champion, Joe I. Smith, on both lists for DraftKings and FanDuel, and then we get a little bit different for the last two. So on DraftKings, Spawn, Davis Thompson, I think we kind of covered the reasons why Spawn is probably going to pop in some models uh, compared to where he would normally be owned. And then on FanDuel, Russell Henley and Aaron Rye are the other two that we would expect to be a little bit higher owned in high stakes contests.
Great ball strikers, right? The theme of all these guys.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Davis Thompson, a little sketchy sometimes, but the rest of these guys, yes. I mean, Aaron Rye also like the epitome of a ball striking robot.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on now. And again, we don't have ownership just yet. Our preliminary ownership is up in our Occupy model at occupyfantasy.com. But again, it's too early to make any inferences from that. Check back in Wednesday evening when it's finally updated for the final ownership push. And then we can determine which guys are going to be too high owned, too low owned to play in our lineups. And Nero, you mentioned the high floors we get from Scheffler and Rory. This is an elevated signature event. But as we missed in the last signature event, we don't want people calling us out this time. There is a cut, top 50 plus ties, in any player within 10 strokes of the lead. So, yes, we have that. And that's why, by the way, because we get so many guys through the cut, it's essentially a no cut event. That's why we have more ownership on the Schefflers, Rorys, because you can go more stars and scrubs without the concern of generally those lower price guys missing the cut.
Yeah, it's always easy, and we see it even more in the signature events that don't have a cut. Like you see even more emphasis on the stars and scrubs constructions. But yeah, there's three of the signature events that have this cut where they cut to the low 50 in ties, and then anyone within 10 in the leader. It's the Genesis. It's this week at the Arnold Palmer, and then the Memorial for Jack's event later in the summer. So yeah, it's something to keep an eye on. But it does, gives you a little bit more freedom. And I take a little bit more risks in these weeks, especially in smaller contests. I will include more guys at lower in the salary ranges than I would in other weeks.
Absolutely, and I'll be right there with you. Now, if we look at the markets have been telling us a lot of great plays over the last 6 weeks, but really the last like 3 seasons since we've been tracking these trifecta plays. And last week we didn't get any spike weeks from the guys, but the guys who we played in the AM wave all made the cut except for Cam Young, whose name may be redacted here shortly. But then the PM guys got pretty unlucky. So we're looking forward to the trifecta plays this week, Nero. We actually have two early trifecta plays as of Tuesday afternoon. Kind of rare to have them this early, but these two guys have seen their odds improve to win the tournament at every sharp sportsbook that we monitor, and they could not be further apart on the data scale, which is confusing to me.
Yeah, well, so you've got two players that have had the moves well in multiple books, and they would be again ball striking robots, Zalatoris and Hovland, right? Not the trifecta yet. They might be by Wednesday night, but like that makes a lot of sense to me. And one of the players makes a lot of sense to me. Tommy Fleetwood, top 15 player in ball striking, total driving, very high up on the list. Like has a great course history here. I think the other one is Sahith Theegala, who doesn't fit the mold, sprays the ball, usually very good hands, very good short game. But what he does have is he's got two very good finishes here the last 2 years in the signature event. He was sixth last year and he was 14th the year before. Plays fairly well in difficult conditions. So, again, some courses just fit certain players' eyes and they play well at them, even though stylistically it might not match up to like who they are as a player. And it's possible that that's the case at Bay Hill for Sahith.
And these are the perfect types of plays for me to mix into our high risk lineups. Sahith Theegala, who the model is not going to improve him. Maybe you write him up in the daily plug, but otherwise, I would not be thinking about playing Thigala except for maybe the ownership angle. And it was kind of similar to Bo Hassler last week, who you and I talked on the show. Didn't fit much of the data driven metrics, yet made the cut, had a pretty poor weekend, but was sitting top 20 heading into Saturday.
Yeah, very disappointing weekend from Hostler. I thought he had a chance to really get up in the mix, and he did. By the way, just played very poorly on the weekend. But yeah, Thigala fits that as well, right? Like he's not gonna pop in any models. I don't know ownership, but I'm guess he's probably going to be like in the high single digits for ownership. He's got a very affordable salary. You probably would have paid more for him last year than the 7,400 that you're having to pay on DK this week. And so you're like, okay, I get very good course history, very affordable price, and I get lowish ownership, especially for this type of an event. Like you're being compensated for the risk, and that's really what you want to make sure that is happening with your high risk selections that you're mixing into your lineups. Make sure you're being compensated for that risk, either in terms of ownership or in terms of the salary or both.
That's a great way to put it, and that's a great way people can think about playing some of these guys in their lineups. Finally, let's close it out with some showdown and some weather notes. And again, we don't know for sure just yet, but I'm going to bring up our trusted resource here at windfinder.com for Bay Hill in Florida. And Nero, if you have it up on your side, the people can see wind extremely heavy on Thursday. I am praying for it to get this crazy unless it affects my lineups in a negative fashion on Sunday. It would be great appointment viewing. Curious to get your thoughts on, as of Tuesday, what we think about this weather and if it can make any decisions for our lineups for us.
Yeah, it's tough to make decisions on your lineups this week based on the wind because it's a small field and all the tee times are condensed. So you don't have like this 10-hour spread of tee times between from the first guys that tee off to the last guys that tee off. I mean, it's usually closer to like 8 hours or so, but still, you don't have like that wide of a spread. So you tend to have, at some point, every single golfer that is in this event is going to be on the golf course at the same time. Now, some of them might only have 2 holes left. Some of them might have, 15 holes left, but that's the way it goes in these signature events. So it is tough. Now, if the forecast holds and it's going to be blowing 20 and gusting 30 at 7 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, and by 5 o'clock on Thursday evening, it's going to be much calmer, then yeah, maybe I'll give a little bit of, maybe I'll break some ties and decisions on some guys who tee off a little bit later in the day on Thursday. But for the most part, like, it's really hard to make decisions. The biggest thing to keep in mind is what type of player profile do I want to target who's going to thrive in these conditions. And you look at, like, Sunday Sunday afternoon, like, is it, first of all, by the time Sunday rolls around, they haven't watered the golf course in 4 days. And if we don't get any rain, I don't really see any rain in the forecast Thursday through Sunday, even though it's been, I think, decently wet in Orlando in the run up. That means you're going to have a dried out golf course, the driest version of the golf course, the firmest version of the golf course on Sunday afternoon, when you are going to have all of the pressure of coming down the stretch trying to win the event, and the wind's going to be blowing 25 and gusting 35 to 40. Uh, Absolute carnage on Sunday afternoon. So again, usually your best players, your high profile players, are the ones that thrive in those conditions. Of course, the hard part is they got to get there first for it to matter. Like, you might have these guys that would thrive in those Sunday afternoon conditions, and they play like trash Thursday to Saturday, and it doesn't even matter, and they don't get there.
It's such a tough. First of all, the professional golfers are going to be livid at the conditions on Sunday, and I am here for the comments about the course. But when you have relatively calm on on Friday and Saturday, and the conditions are so different, it makes it difficult to develop a player profile, because do we want the guys who play well in the wind, or do we want the guys that can go super low when the conditions are relatively calm, and then we can get that extra fantasy point cushion like we did this past week? All is to say, it's really tough. Monitor the weather, and I still don't think it's a bad idea. Like last week, even if we're wrong in some capacity, if we turn out to be right, the edge is pretty significant. But like you said, Nero, the one thing is the condensed tee times. All in all, it's a very difficult week to try to predict what to do. But I guess in a single sentence, what would you suggest people do out there? Is it just sit tight, monitor the weather, try to make a move late, or just maybe more of a showdown type of effect?
Yeah, I would sit tight and monitor the weather, and I would not overreact this week. Last week I overreacted, so did you. It worked out well, even though maybe it didn't wasn't the exact reason why. I would, however, overreact in Showdown on Thursday and Sunday, if the forecast holds. In a Showdown environment, I would skew towards trying to have a few more players in my lineups that were skewed towards the later tee times. Again, if we have no change in the forecast, because the earlier players are going to have to deal with 5, 7, I don't know, maybe 10 miles an hour more wind, a little bit gustier, and that might make a difference in Showdown. Might only be a half stroke, quarter of a stroke or something, but that's enough to play for a showdown edge. For classic, much harder. Sorry, it's like 9 sentences now. But yeah, I would just sit tight and probably wouldn't overreact for classic, but then play it for Thursday and Sunday on Showdown.
To be fair, I asked you like a 7-part question and then also requested a 1 sentence response. So thank you for responding thoroughly. All right, guys, that'll do it for this video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel to get notified when we post these videos every single week. Give us a thumbs up, the best free way to support the channel. Any questions, comment below. Comment. Always help the channel, help us get more views, help us continue to make these PGA videos for the rest of the season. So drop a comment. And let's see what else. OccupyFantasy.com. If you're not subscribed to OccupyFantasy.com, one of the most affordable and best value DFS sites in the industry, you are behind the 8 ball when it comes to PGA DFS, because we do it so differently than everyone else out there with our Occupy model, with our daily plug, with our lineup builder, and with our betting market updates. All in all, it's got the best soup you can find in the industry. So for Nero, I'm Brian. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Good luck and enjoy the Arnold Palmer Invitational.